Hello and welcome to round one of the AMS Oz or Automobilista Australia Formula 3 Development Series. Obviously, this is a little bit of a spin-off of the Automobilista Australia Rookie Cup, which has it's had three previous seasons. The inaugural season, I believe, taking place in the Mitsubishi Lancer Rs. The second season taking place in the Minis, and last season in the Formula Trainers. And it's had a little bit of a rename and reshape. And we're in the F3s, and this time there's no driver aids for our drivers out there. So they're having to learn the hard way. They've been thrown into the deep end, and they've been giving a tricky little but a fun car when you do get it right in the Formula 3s. And got to say, fantastic European Formula 3 skin pack, livery pack out there, the 2018 season, I believe, and we're underway here, round one at Monza. As Glenn Miles sets a 56 dead, he goes P3. Not bad from him. He's shown signs of improving in these cars. He's slowly built up, and he's looked okay, has Glenn Miles. So hopefully throughout the night he can continue to improve. River Whisper, a late joiner in practice. He's still getting to grips with these cars, and Wayne Whitmore, very solid. Obviously, 1 minute 50.2 with Turmo 1.2 behind. Both those times pretty decent. See, 1 lap qualifying once again. Or 1 lap timed hot lap, that is. And currently, you've got Gary Neville, another late comer to the session, out there. To set his hot lap. So he's coming up to turn 1. He's got lap traffic in front. Hopefully that traffic gets out of the way. Looks like we've got a couple other cars as well leaving the pit lane. Got the yellow flag down. Hopefully that's just someone in front pulling over. Yep, indeed. Well done, lads. In fact, we're right on board, Mr. Neville. On his roll hoop, coming up to the second chicane, turn 4. Del Regia makes about 100 metres down to second gear. A little bit slow, takes a little bit too much curb, but he's up by a 10, so he's had a solid first sector so far. There's a lot of time to be found though in this middle sector. And a third, well, Lesmo 1. Not a bad little run through there. Lesmo 2 keeps it in fourth gear. Can take it in third. You'll find a lot of people take that second Lesmo in third gear, but he chooses to hold it in fourth. Doesn't want to overstress the engine. Now coming up to Ascari. Probably want to break it about 100 metres down to third gear. There it is. Takes a bit of curb. Patient on the throttle. Up to fourth. Nice and steady through there. The quickest middle sector. But he's still within striking distance of Whitmore, coming up to the final corner. Parabolica, now to third. Not the best line, but still not the worst either. Nice and solid. This will be a decent lap from Gary Neville. 1 minute 50.7, so that puts him provisionally on the front row. Half a second behind Wayne Whitmore. So not bad there from Gary Neville. 1 minute 50, nothing to scoff at around this track in these cars. And we've got Steve Bolger on a lap. I do believe we've got Ricky Slick out there as well. We do, he's just behind him, and Brendan Ross has started his lap, so we'll stick with Brendan Ross. He's struggled a little bit, as you can see, sliding all over the place. Obviously, it took him a little while to sort of get to grips with the form of the trainers, and I think it's the same thing as sort of happening in these cars in practice. He has been sliding around quite a bit. 8 tenths down, obviously, a bit of a slide through the first chicane and on the exit as well. Decent run though through De La Rogia there. Come up to Lesmo 1. We've got Steve Bolger, purple first sector. He did set the fastest time of those in the server in 1 minute 49.3. So he's looking mighty quick in these F3 cars. He's just behind Rossi on screen there. But we'll stay with Rossi for now. Looks like he's put together a decent middle sector. 8 tenths down, so sort of again matched Whitmore's middle sector. Nice run through Ascari, and once again purple for Steve Bolger in the middle sector, so he was about 6 tenths faster than Whitmore in the first sector, another 3 tenths faster in the second. So we'll just wait for Rossi to cross the line, and then we will cut to Mr. Bolger. Time has expired, by the way. These are the last drivers set a lap. So Ross, he maintained his lap time to Whitmore for the rest of the lap after mucking up his first sector, so he'll be annoyed with himself. But Steve Bolger, bam! The two purple first and second sectors putting him on putting him on pole position as Ricky Slick does not beat it as he crashes his car in the background. But that final sector though, lost 3 tenths of a second did Steve Bolger. So just have a look on the replay and see if he made a little mistake. Let's see if we can find it. Doesn't look like he made any massive errors. Just Whitmore very quick through that final sector. Anyway, obviously we'll just go through the qualifying order. We've got Steve Bolger on pole position with Wayne Whitmore joining him on the front row. Behind them we've got Gary Neville in third, Brendan Ross fourth, Turmo in fifth, Ricky Slick in sixth, Glenn Miles seventh, River Whisper eighth, and Cracker didn't set a lap time. He will start at the back in P9. So we'll just take a short break as I conduct the drivers briefing, but we shall be back with some action very shortly. Alright, and we are back. I've conducted the drivers' briefing. The drivers know what to expect. Do want to make just a... Might have to leave the game for a second because I do want people to have a look at Ricky Slick's fantastic rusted livery that he wants to share with the world. So we'll have to download it and leave the game while I install it. But as I was going over with the drivers this series, it's all about obviously driver development, as obviously the name curtails. And we want to see go out there. A lot of these guys, they're not the quickest, and they're not the most consistent, so we want to help these guys just find that little bit of extra speed and hopefully make Automobilista Australia a lot more competitive. And obviously for a lot of these guys, obviously if you're racing more people, you're having a lot more fun. So hopefully you can find that bit of time for everybody, and we see some more fantastic racing, and not only obviously this series, but in all the other series that we run. Alright, so just in the warm-up session, still got 2 minutes remaining. But just going to be leaving the server for a second, so I'll just do apologise. But should be back in the game soon. But yes, the big talking point I think for a lot of people at this circuit, or the big problems that people do have is with traction, especially coming out of the first chicane. A lot of people, they initially carry either too much speed through the initial right-hand part of the first chicane, and the rear end sort of pendulums on them a little bit, and then they try and get on the throttle as the rear end sliding, and it doesn't help that they also take a bit of curb at the second apex, and then they lose the rear end. So that's something obviously for those watching at home to look out for. There will be, I'm sure, at least 2 or 3 spins coming out of that first chicane, and then I have seen when I was in the server driving myself, and obviously in the warm-up just before, there's a couple guys that I do believe have gone around at the second chicane, so that's another thing that to look out for. I think we'll see spins in obviously first and second chicanes. The rest of the track in these cars, fairly simple, but the second Lesmo, people have been pushing too hard and running wide on the grass, and in these cars you don't want to be bouncing on the grass because they do send you pretty high, and they will bite, and quite hard. I think a lot of these guys are probably a bit lucky that they don't have a motion rig or anything like that to put up with the G's as of going over the grass. Otherwise, they'd have some pretty sore backs after practice. Anyway, we have been joined in the commentary box as well. Obviously, Mr. Rhodes has just snuck in. I don't know if he's ready. His mic is muted, but he has joined us. He will join us at some point.
Yep, sorry, I am here. Yeah, I had a mild panic when I found out the series was starting tonight. I'm used to working with the Super 2 and working with ARW, and we're used to having off-season breaks and the like. And but the rookies are keen to go racing, so off-season break wasn't a thing for these guys. But I didn't bother to check that until about half an hour ago. So I am here just in time.
That is partly our fault. Obviously, we just wanted to. I was thinking of getting a week break. It would have been a 2-week break, obviously, with the obviously touring cars happening next Monday. But I thought let's just get them out there straight away. That way, it's sort of got the obviously they've got a refresher of how this track goes, as well as obviously they can compare how these cars handle around this track to obviously the trainers, and obviously as well without driver aids.
Exactly, yeah, they can keep the momentum going up, and they don't have time out of the seat to allow any skills to become rusty or anything. It allows them to just build on their pace and their experience that they picked up in the trainers, and again with the same tracks almost back to back, they can immediately see where the differences in the cars are, and that will only improve their learning with these cars, and with downforce especially is also a big thing, a big difference into this season.
Yeah, a lot of them I found out in practice that they just left the downforces at default, and at this circuit at Monza, that is well, you don't want to be doing that, because if there's 1 or 2 guys out there that are smart enough to take wing off, you're going to be well, falling behind pretty quickly, even if you're driving your absolute nuts off through the corners. So I did chuck a set up to a lot of people and tell them that you want to be hitting at least 245 on the straights, and thankfully they've all listened and it's close in the field up. But the formation lap is underway for the inaugural, obviously, Automobilista Australia / AMS Oz F3 Development Series. And got to say, qualifying specialist Steve Bolger, he joined the series and I think he got 3 or 4 pole positions in a row. And last season he got quite a few in his second Rookie Cup campaign. And for the F3s, bang, straight on pole by pretty decent margin in the end. And he's got Wayne Whitmore, obviously championship contender last season, but missed a few rounds which cost him, as well as obviously being in the wrong class at the start as well. So those two on the front row. But Gary Neville, very solid qualifying effort from him. He's been on the slow rise of late in the touring cars and in the trainers. His speed has picked up gradually, and he's getting closer and closer towards the front, which is good to see. He'll start third. Brendan Ross starting this series a little bit slowly, a little similar to how he went in the trainers last season, where he wasn't the quickest in the beginning, but towards the end he was certainly quite close to the quickest, if not the. And then we've got Turmo in P5. He'll be a little disappointed with his qualifying effort because he does have the third fastest time on the practice page on AMS Oz / Live Races, or amsoz.liveracers.com. And then we've got Ricky Slick in that rusted livery, as you can see on your screen. That hillbilly trailer park trash. He starts P6. Then we've got Glenn Miles. He did a fairly solid effort, and he will start in P7. River Whisper, late joiner in practice. He'll start P8. Luke Joyner, bit of warping there, but he's back. Hopefully that doesn't happen throughout the race. He'll start P9 again. He was a very late joiner. I don't even know if he may have got 1 or 2 practice laps in, but he'll start P9. And Cracker, he'll start 10th. He didn't set a lap, and I do believe Brownie was trying to join the during the warm-up session, but didn't have the correct track. So hopefully he does come around for obviously the second and third races. But for this first one, we've got 10 drivers on the grid.
We do pretty solid grid, and not so different actually to the grid size you get in Formula 3 in Australia. Actually, they're not unfortunately they're not having the numbers they'd like to be having. I think they're sitting on about 10 to 12 cars as well. They're doing better than Formula 4, but not to the standard they used to be doing. Unfortunately, the costs getting a bit high locally for us to run a local series. But yeah, 10 cars is a solid grid for the first race of the season.
I think the difference in the problem with the Australian series is that you've got F4 there. I think the fact that they're split certainly makes it a bit difficult. Where if you had just that one singular series to funnel everybody into, you get larger grids and obviously better drivers and better teams. But hopefully that sorts itself in time. Anyway, the drivers have formed up on the grid. They've formed up nicely, so hopefully no one will overheat, although it looks like Gary Neville's a bit far back in his grid slot, so it is holding everybody up. There we go, it's moved him, and we are 1 light, 2, 3, 4. Now we wait at 5. Away we go. Wayne Whitmore, shocking start, and it looks like Gary Neville almost stalled as well. Ross had to get well out of the way and off the circuit, and that's cost him badly, with obviously Whitmore pretty much going nowhere off the start. Looks like Ricky Slick's had a fantastic start. He's up 3 spots. No incidents as yet at the first chicane. That does look like one of the, looks like Turmo. They're all over the sausage curb at turn 2 there, but no incidents at turn 1 at Monza in an online race. Is this real?
I'd be inclined to agree. That's odd for. I mean, we saw last round that shenanigans went down at turn 1, but yeah, that was a great clean run for the first guys. Best for that, aside from Bolger starting to throw at the front, would be probably Wayne Whitmore, who's just holding off with the slick at the moment. And
yeah, poor old Gary Neville, he started 3rd on the grid. He's down to 9th, and Gary Neville's dropped a couple spots as well. And looked like side by side at the back, Gary Neville,
going 3 wide.
River Whisper, and Cracker all side by side. 3 abreast through the Lesbos. You don't see that very often. And Gary Neville moves up a couple spots from that. And further up, we've got Ricky Slick all over the back of Wayne Whitmore now. It's right on board the rusty POS of Ricky Slick's Fortec Motorsports F3. And in fact, Whitmore's got a fantastic run out of Ascari, and he will, I'd almost certainly say, take the lead into Parabolica, and he does. But he's not going to have the slipstream down, obviously, the long main straight. In fact, doesn't get the greatest run out of Parabolica, but Bolger behind had a little bit of slide, and that's cost him a little bit of time. And now the slipstream snake begins. His first four have broken away. And Bolger now having a look up the inside into the first chicane, and Ross having a little bit of a look at Ricky Slick behind. Oh, and a massive lock-up.
No, he just missed that. That was a smoke show the entire way in.
He has definitely flat-spotted. You can actually see it on your screen. He's flat-spotted both his front tyres. If he has high force feedback, his rig or his desk will be shaking like crazy down the straights. And he'll probably have jelly arms after the race after that one. And that's given Ricky Slick a very good opportunity into the second chicane, the De La Roja, but he thinks better of it. And Bolger for now holds on to P2. And in fact, Ricky Slick, I think, got on the curb there a little bit, and that's dropped him time. It's going to give Ross a decent run coming into the Lesmos.
He did, Gary. It was all over that sausage curb on the to the first part of the front. I think he ran it wide and just had to back off everything so he can stable the car again, because these things, especially in the low-speed corners without the downforce to actually kick them on the road, they are very, very twitchy indeed. So you need to. No, there's a word for it, but the words aren't coming out. But yeah, you need to play nice with these cars when you're not actually having the assistance of the downforce.
Sorry about that. Just having some technical issues with the your comments. I'm just trying to fix it at the moment. So, sorry about that.
All good.
Can you just try and say something?
I was trying to go back to find Bolger. Yeah, I was going to say actually, I did a similar thing in the first. That's right, the last race at Albert Park in Super 2 a couple of weeks back. Did a spot that was painful actually. I was trying to avoid someone else's. I was broken car that pulled in front of me. Trying to avoid it and end up nearly. Actually, didn't slide in the back of them, but the feedback through the steering wheel was terrible. I had a glass of water. Happy it wasn't full because the glass of water would have gone everywhere. We've actually broken. Wayne Whitmore's just pulled away slightly at front now from Bolger in second. Ricky Slick in third. Managed to get Brendan Ross behind him. I think Brendan Ross, possibly because they are actually teammates in alternate series, is possibly not wanting to dive up the inside and send off his otherwise teammates. Things would not go down well. There's likely to be a fly on the wall for that debrief. Things were to go down between the two of them. Joyner in fifth. Tomo's back in sixth. Gary Neville in seventh. Cracker back in eighth. Glenn Miles in ninth in what is almost a Force India looking Formula 3. And River was back in 10th.
Yeah, I do believe it has got Force India sponsored a logo on it. I do believe Carlin did have some kind of affiliation with Force India at some point. This is a 2018 livery pack, and we've had a spinner. Steve Bolger's gone around at the second Lesmo. So I'll just have a look on the replay and see what he's done. Now, I do know you're watching, Brian Walsh. If you could just tell us if you can hear Rody, that would be great. So, yeah, Bolger just ran wide, second Lesmo, got on the power on the grass, and bang, around he went. Didn't rip a front wing off. So he'll be thankful that damage is at a fairly low level, but he's going to have to drive pretty quickly if he wants to catch up to Cracker in front, who's 5 seconds down the road. He still has 6 laps to go. None of him, though. Gary Neville battling it out with Turmo. Turmo's run wide at Parabolica, and thank you very much, says Gary Neville. Now he's got 4.8 seconds to Luke Joyner in front as Wayne Whitmore sets the fastest lap of the race. He sets his first 49 of the weekend. Good time to do it during the race, and he's got a comfortable 3-second lead over Ricky Slick. And Ricky Slick has broken away from Ross now. Ross probably just out of slipstream range at 1.4 seconds, and behind him Luke Joyner 2.6 seconds behind Brendan Ross.
Yeah, I'd say he's probably just out of slipstream range there, Ross, out of Ricky's way. You're interesting to find just in this. It's interesting to compare the pace that we had in the previous season compared to some of the pace that had come out already. Some people more comfortable in these cars. Just going back on Bolger quickly, just a quick look at the front end of that car. There is actually some damage to the front wing. It's not off, as we said, but there is damage to it, so that will be hampering his speed of turn into corners.
And he's had a massive lock-up once again at the second chicane. So he's driving on, I would have said 50-cent pieces. We got a yellow, and that is Turmo's gone around at the first Lesmo this time. But back on, obviously, speaking of Bolger's tyres, I was going to say 50-cent pieces. I think he's driving on cubes at this point with the way he's locked up. But just having a look to see what happened to Turmo. First Lesmo. He's touched the curb a little bit and it's unsettled the back end. He was off the throttle as well, which is something you don't want to do. You want to be on the brake or throttle, and the back end got away with him probably the mid corner. He didn't realise it, then got on the throttle, and that just made things worse. But he's got going again, but unfortunately for him, it's dropped him back down to obviously last in the race. And Steve Bolger now, obviously that moved him back up to P7, and he's only got 2.6 now to Cracker in front. And at the front, just having a look at the lap times, looks like Ricky Slick's obviously gained back a half a second on Whitmore. A 50.7 for Whitmore and a 50.2 for Ricky Slick. And thank you, Walshy, for telling us, or obviously letting us know that Rosie can be obviously heard loud and clear. It's good to hear, because I've obviously used a different OBS setting and I've had to change some stuff. So good to hear.
Yeah, it's good to hear that I can be heard, and I'm not just talking. I wouldn't say talking to myself. I'm talking to you. But I've experienced the listening end of a one-sided conversation, and it is very much fill in the blanks, and sometimes the blanks aren't filled in the best way.
Yep. So obviously after Whitmore, I wouldn't say he had a poor lap. 50.7 is a pretty decent lap by most people's standards, but his first sector 35.9. on this lap compared to Ricky Slick's 36.8. So he's gone, no, you've had enough of gaining on me. I'm going to pull away again. So just have a look. But that said, though, Ricky Slick half a second faster again in the middle sector. So
yeah, I think that was. I think that's supposed to be a case of one of Ricky's big issues is that that second chicane. I think that's been what's tripping him up lap on lap. He just can't quite get the line through there. He's carrying a little bit too much speed, throwing over the curbs, and unlike a Super 2 car, you can't do it with these things. You're running that low to the ground. Actually saw Turmo trying to get out of the gravel trap earlier, and he was actually just spinning the rear wheels. Front wheel was actually off the ground. It was tripoding on the front under tray, and the rear wheels getting him out of there. But yeah, you can't throw these things over the curbs at all, even less than you could the trainers. So Ricky's style isn't always the smoothest, and it's possibly what's pinging him up on some of the more technical sections of this track.
Well, both Ricky and Ross gaining slightly again in the final sector gap to 2.9 seconds. And obviously Ross setting a purple final sector, but I'm pretty sure that was the slipstream, obviously coming up to Parabolica and then coming up to the start-finish line, which helped him with that. But another, and we've seen that's Rossi's engine. There it is, bang!
Oh no!
There is flames. You can get out the snags, get out the burgers, because hell, even get out the steaks, because it is barbecue time. Because that is not a race car anymore, it is a barbecue, and drivers were warned it's very easy to blow an engine in these things, and if I had to hazard a guess, just go on board. No, it's just from an upshift, but I reckon how he's done that is through downshifts. Very easy to slam.
Whitmore's around.
Yes, he is at the exit of the first Lesmo at the look of it, so we'll just have a look on board. So it's all happening midpoint of this race, and I haven't even brought up that tyres will be an issue later on. They do get a bit skaty, so he's just ran wide onto the gravel, very wide, and yep, bit of throttle on the grass, around he went, and now he's down. Well, he only lost one spot because he was so far in front of Luke Joyner, but Ricky Slick now 6.9 seconds in the lead, and it's his race to lose. And got to say, Luke Joyner, he's had a quiet race, but he's not made mistakes unlike those in front of him or behind him, and he's in a well-earned third place at the moment.
He is. He's had a pretty quiet race so far, which with what we've had that's actually made the noise, it's a good sort of quiet. He hasn't been having any big battles, but the same from what we've seen. But at the same time, he hasn't been blowing engines, or he hasn't been firing it off into a gravel trap. So yeah, he's doing a good job just achieving it, just staying flying under the radar and putting himself into a podium position at the moment.
And that's a lot of the time. It's what it's all about. It's just staying obviously out of trouble and not making any massive mistakes, and you can find yourself in really good positions. Like we've seen Brian Walsh in a few of the races he's done. Obviously last year he had a couple really good races. Obviously his pace was all right, but he did make mistakes, and he found himself up in, I think, a podium position in one or two races, and I think he got a fourth outright in one of those races as well. It's all about just not making the massive mistake. And I think that's something that a lot of these guys in this Monday night series, they do have issues with a lot of the time.
Yeah, it's all about keeping eye control, and then especially as the race goes on, concentration just naturally gets a little bit harder to come by. And only having raced for a little while do you actually learn how to fight that. But having not spent a lot of time in sim racing, yeah, you used to sort of, if you play something like Mario Kart's a 3-lap race, you come into this and you're dealing with 3 times that in cars that are a little bit more faster than Mario's go-kart. There's a little bit more concentration involved, and it's just it's part of the rhythm to get into.
I think a big thing is that I think maybe for some people they just get a little bit caught up, as you see Cracker almost running wide there at the first Lesmo. But I think a lot of people got caught up in that it's not just he runs wide at the second Lesmo though. Hopefully he doesn't spin it like a lot of other... Oh, almost did. Keeps it going, but that'll cost him a bunch of time. But yeah, a lot of people, I think, struggle with the fact that not only are you obviously racing around the circuit on your own, you're obviously dealing with obviously having to race other people at the same time, and that people can get a little bit flustered and obviously lose concentration on obviously what's ahead of them. And I know from my personal experience, it's all about just focusing on getting the next corner right, and even breaking down a corner. So you're coming up to a braking zone, you want to find that exact point every lap where you want to brake, or around about the same point. And then you get up to the next part, as we've seen. Ricky slicks off. That's an engine failure again. That's smoke coming from the back. So there's our second barbecue. And that car's made out of asbestos, so it's probably best that we red flag and get people out of there, because yeah, that ain't good. So let's just, once again, coming out of the second chicane. Timescaled wear is on the server. I think we might have to change that for the following rounds. So we don't have as many engine failures, but there we go. Ricky Slick, Brendan Ross, both out with engine failures. And Wayne Whitmore, all his Christmases and birthdays have come at once.
They have, yeah. I was paying attention after we had the first engine failure to where people were shifting, and it seemed that Ricky was pushing a lot higher than some of the cars. So it's possibly just a driving style thing, where possibly Ross and Ricky will need to change where they shift, because a lot of the drivers, and especially a lot of the inexperienced drivers, are actually treating the cars a bit more gently, opposed to Ricky. And I didn't actually have to see Ross's shifting patterns, but they look like they were both pushing the limiter quite high, which was what was possibly causing issues as we go on in later stages of the race.
Well, I did just get a message from my trusty friend Scruff that he was actually short shifting quite a lot. So I think what people are finding, I think the issue, it's not so much the upshifts, it's if they're maintaining higher revs in 6th gear down the straight, and if it's not that, it's downshifts. These cars, very, very sensitive, and that's where you're going to do it. Especially at this track, you want to obviously get down the gears quickly to slow the car down, but you don't want to use the gears in these cars to do it. Yeah, I think that's
Glenn Miles.
Glenn Miles. He doesn't have a front wing, and he didn't notice it going into parabolic, and he kept going. So that's why he's off in the gravel there. So Luke Joyner now up to P2. Steve Bolger after his bit of a mare of a race. He's still going, and he's got himself in front of Gary Neville. So Gary Neville must have made a mistake somewhere. 53 for him on that last lap. So indeed it was. So because Gary Neville obviously was behind Luke Joyner. Now it's Steve Bolger, and Gary Neville once again drops out of a podium position and back into 4th.
Yeah, he sort of he's where Joyner's had the luck of it. Gary unfortunately hasn't, just been sort of been matched around and thrown around by the order of things, as it were. Fast drivers coming up behind him, slow drivers in front going off in front of him, and he's been bouncing around just the edge of a podium. He's got the speed to get there. It's just almost a bit of luck as well with how this race is panning out. But he's got the pace. He's got top four pace, which should hopefully name a podium. Hopefully further on tonight.
Yep, and just watching, obviously, River Whisper taking a little bit too much curbing, getting on the throttle a bit excitedly, coming out of the Delarosia, or the second chicane there, and having a half spin into the barrier, but damage turned down means he keeps his front wing.
We just had someone else disappear as well, actually. I'm just trying to check out the replay to find out what happened, but Turmo gone, yeah.
Let's have a look. I think it's another engine failure. Let's have a look. He's parked it at the chicane. So what's happened here? Yeah, smoke coming out the back, and he's blown an engine. And there it is. There's another barbecue, folks. So that's 3 engine failures in this one. I think, as I said, I think we're probably going to have to turn time-scaled wear off for this one, because these engines are quite sensitive. But,
yeah, they are. It's not like the Formula trainers that use production blocks. The engines in Formula trainers you can find in like a 10-year-old Ford Focus or Ford Fiesta. Joiner's just gone around as well. Compared to these things running engines which are a bit more race focused, race built with a better power but much less reliability.
Well, what was interesting is that we got to have a look at that replay. And Steve Bolger had actually gone past Luke Joyner, so see. And Bolger has set a purple first sector on this final lap, so he's on a charge. Yeah, Joyner just got off the throttle in the middle of that second chicane there, and that sent him around. He's got Gary Neville 3 or 4 seconds behind him. But yeah, purple first sector for Bolger. His middle sector, obviously, he didn't have a good run through the chicane, as we're looking at the replay of Joyner going around. As I think Joyner, he's gone wide at Ascari again, but he will retain third place unless he goes off at the final corner. But Whitmore will take the inaugural Formula 3 Development Series race after a bit of luck. He takes the first win of the season, and Steve Bolger will recover to finish P2 after starting on pole, making a mistake, going all the way down the back of the field and then coming back due to DNFs and spins to get himself P2. Luke Joyner just holds on for P3, and Gary Neville will finish P4 and rips his front wing off on the main straight, as we see Glenn Miles come out of the pits after the race is concluded. So he did fix the front wing eventually, and Cracker now coming out of Parabolica. Just squirting it. Getting a little bit sideways, but he will come home 5th. And River Whisper will claim 6th place. And because Glenn Miles was lapped and Turmo was in front of him, Turmo is actually P7 and Glenn Miles is 8th. So that might have to be adjusted on live races at some point.
Yeah, usually it's set up in that way that it's interesting that actually Glenn Miles has actually been classified to DNF. Unfortunately, it's just the nature of how I suppose a computer deals with anomalies such as that. In a more human world, it would be classed as a finisher ahead of Turmo rather than a DNF ahead of Turmo. But such as the nature, that was a good race. The only major hampering being mechanical issues to do with the engines, which I mean it wasn't as bad as when I think of attrition, or the Formula 1 race, I think it was last year at Melbourne comes to mind. But yeah, apart from that, yeah, some good racing.
Yeah, it was a little bit of obviously a little bit of good racing, but unfortunately, once obviously it looked like there was going to be a battle that was going to come to be, someone would have a spin. But obviously that's what this series is about. It's obviously about these guys getting to grips with racing without driver aids, and These cars are not only delicate, as we've seen with obviously people blowing engines, but they're also very easy to obviously send round or even understeer off. So it's all about finding that right balance in attack and keeping it on the road at the same time.
Yeah, and you got to change your styles. Anyone that's there'll be some of the guys that will come out of last season in the trainers, taking more of a, you can drive, as I mentioned a couple of times, you can drive those things, have to drive things with a little bit of sideways to get the full speed out of them. You just simply can't do it with these things. They're much longer, much skinnier, much more susceptible to getting thrown around like that. And yeah, and just especially with the downforce, you go sideways, you lose the airflow over the aerofoils, and then you've just got no grip whatsoever. And then you're not quite flying, but you're basically floating on air until you find yourself the nearest wall or gravel trap.
Yeah, I'm not. Obviously, I did race in the F3 series that we did have last year. I'm just trying to remember if these. I'm pretty sure these cars also have aero wash, which is something that I think a lot of people aren't used to. Obviously, in Formula One, it's obviously a massive talking point with obviously a lack of overtaking, with the lots of little aero details on the car, making it more difficult for the car behind to follow and the like, and that obviously leads to less overtaking. Obviously, these cars, it's been simulated that it's in there. Obviously, every kind of race car has some kind of aero wake behind them, which does obviously make the car behind obviously not follow quite as well as when cars are designed. It's with clear air in front of them, so it doesn't help having that air disturbed. And obviously for those that haven't experienced it, what it does is that if you with well in sim racing and in R Factor and Automobilista and the like that do try and simulate it, is that when you're following another car through a lot of, it's generally the faster corners, slower corners, because you're not going fast enough to really use the downforce. But say through Lesmo 1 and 2 and Parabolica here, you'll be following another car and you'll get that front end just push out and understeer, and you sort of have to change your driving style and braking points as well as turning points. You either have to turn in a little bit later and get obviously a straighter run or straighter exit, or you have to compensate by turning in a bit earlier to try and obviously turning earlier and a bit tighter to try and carry the speed through. But it is something that I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure it's implemented with these cars, but it's not as massive as what it would be, say, with the Formula Ultimates, where if you're 1.2 seconds behind a car and you're going through a fast corner, that you're just going to understeer off if you try and take it like you would on a qualifying lap per se.
Yeah, and that's an issue as well, is you can't run. So you can't run nose cone to tailpipe like you can in a Formula Trainer and still have the similar handling characteristics. You've got all the aero disturbance, which it's a big thing in F1 because it's causing lack of overtaking, which is why there's a lot of suggestions to remove at least some of the aero influence, which I believe they've started doing to a degree, which does promote a little more overtaking because you can actually run behind someone and then put yourself in a position to do something other than a dive. Like I just saw it on Facebook today, actually. Lando Norris last weekend apparently managed to pull a dive around the outside of someone, go back in the pack. It was looked like he was crashing halfway through and then turned into overtake. But the concept of sort of lick the stamp and send it moves in racing doesn't have such an aero wash impact, is normally just a last resort move, and it's a really ballsy thing / what the guy next to you is going to do that you're not going to get turned in on and then wreck both your cars. But in Formula One, it's almost you have to do it to get an overtake done, or someone else has to make a mistake. Because you can't run close enough to someone to do a traditional sort of 2 or 3 turn overtaking move, because your handling is just that buggered that it penalises you for being the slower driver as such. So it's something that F1's got to cover, and it's something that the guys have to cover here, but obviously not nearly as badly as they do in Formula One.
Yeah, in F3, well, in all the lower categories, really, I don't think it's really that much of an issue because the cars aren't going as quickly through the corners, and also being spec cars as well, they don't really allow flip-ups and the aero pieces, which do cause so many of the disturbances. But yeah, as you're saying, obviously about those, lick the stamp and send it overtakes. I think why it was such a big deal, obviously, when Ricardo, you see, he was really the first one to sort of start doing that. It's because no one had really done it as often and as successfully, because it's so difficult to. You've got to obviously know who you're racing against to do it. I think a lot of people are learning the hard way that Max Verstappen's just going to drive into you, as poor old Carlos Sainz found out last night. Yeah, you've got to obviously find out who to do it, who to do it against, when to do it. Obviously, we have heard, I think Martin Brundle goes on about it quite a lot, in that you want to do it pretty much as soon as you're close enough to surprise the other driver, because if they have knowledge that you're going to do it, they're going to cover it off, or they're going to move over and there's going to be a bit of contact. So it's all about the timing of it, who you're racing against, and obviously what corner as well. You've got to think ahead that if you do run a little bit wide, it's not going to be a gravel trap or a wall that you're going to obviously run wide into. But in these cars, you don't have to do it as much. Obviously, these cars have a lot of slipstream and not as much aero weight to deal with. But in Formula 1, it is something that they do have to look at. I know there's been talk of ground effect. I'm not exactly sold on ground effect. I think that would make Formula 1 a bit too dangerous for my taste. But they've certainly got to get rid of a lot of the flip-up parts. As we saw, obviously they wiped them all off after 2008. They did make them ugly by obviously narrowing the rear wings and such, but I think taking the aero parts off will be a start, and then maybe a little bit of obviously ground effect, but I think they probably need to widen the cars to almost like 97 spec as well. I think widening the cars a little bit, give them a little bit more mechanical grip, and I reckon that will help aid overtaking.
Yeah, exactly. Like, part of the thing with Formula 3 is it's an aggressive series. It's not to the level of F1 though, where the design is, it's very much, it's more a case of they're trying to find speed themselves rather than rob everyone else around them of speed, as opposed to Formula 1, where half the design has to be, all right, how can we drag the aero off the back of this thing to not only benefit us, but to absolutely make a tumbleweed of air behind us for the guy following us. As opposed to these things where the more focus is just more on how can we extract the speed out of these things, but in a way that also means racing happenings. And that's part of the good thing about being in spec series. One guy does all the aero for you, and then you just run it as a team yourself. But all the aero is not designed in a way to create a huge disturbance of air and make it impossible for someone to follow. So it's a bit more of a friendly series in that aspect, and that's probably why it's not as bad here. Opposed to Formula 1 where the money's being thrown around and there's so much of a priority put on being at the front that you are making such an effort to ruin everything for the one behind you so that you do stay in front.
Yes, and then obviously with F3s as well, the racing's a lot shorter. When there's obviously shorter racing, obviously generally it's 2 or 3 races in a race race weekend, and they'll be anywhere between 6 laps to maybe 15 or so, and there's urgency. If you don't qualify well, you've got to make it up very, very quickly, and you've got to do it obviously in ways where in Formula 1 obviously got more laps or strategy and the like to sort of rely on getting a couple places up, while in F3 and obviously the lower categories, you've got to do it on the racetrack and you've got to do it quick.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's with shorter races you can't pull pit strategy or anything like that, and you can't try and make up moves there. It's good in a way that the racing has then evolved in a way that you can still make up places on the track. Going back to Formula 1 and sort of doing a nice round circle on this, yeah, there's no pass Formula 1, and it becomes, that's other things you almost have to put that much effort into pit strategy. You do pass someone there because it's almost the only other way to pass someone is to pit ahead of them and then somehow work the undercut or work the overcut or whatever you want to find, work to get an overtake down there. The racing's no longer on the track. It's in a way similar to supercars. That's a whole other kettle of fish to deal with in another series.
Certainly is. Well, it is time for qualifying 2. And it's just ticked over. We've had, this server has reset and timescaled where it has been taken off, so we shouldn't see so many engine failures this time about. I think another reason why there was so many engine failures is when you do have timescaled on it, timescales it to the amount of laps that is set for the circuit in the GDB file. So it would have been set to 53 laps, and with the way obviously some people were driving it, there's no way an F3 car's engine would have lasted that long. So taking that off, it should see people finish unless they obviously do some crazy downshifts and upshifts and all kinds of silly stuff to really blow it. So just about to get underway. Turmo will be the first driver to get us underway for qualifying 2, and then Whitmore's the second car out on track. So 2 fairly quick guys in these cars. First up. Just right on board Turmo. So Rosie, why don't you go through a lap of the Monza circuit?
Yeah, I'll give it a shot based on what it is they're doing. Yeah, so they're flat out down this front straight. It's a long front straight, this one. Banging on the gears, about 100 metres just after what we do in a GT3 car. Down to second through here. Just going to keep the throttle nice and contained, keep the car straight, but also getting through the corner. Then back up through the gears again. Through this country gearbox in these things. Back up to 6, we come to this moving right hand. You can go full throttle here. The downforce takes care of any issues with the rear grip unless you're really trying to send it in there. Going down to probably just after the bridge, I'd imagine. Yep, similar braking point to what the GT3s have. In the second again, just getting across, a little bit of wiggle there for Turmo there. The second curb, the sausage curb tripping up a little bit there, but he's kept the pace going. Up to 4th, and then through the first of the 2 Lesmos, nice bit of entry curb there, and just out to the edge of the exit curb as well, so very clean line there. Through the second one, back to 3rd, he's chosen through here, probably just give it a drive out of the corner. Then up to 4th, up to 5th, going up to 6th now, through this sort of curved straight, and underneath the bridge where the old oval used to go across. Be good to use that again. Down about the 100-metre board again, down to 3rd here through which I wish I remember the name of. I had plenty of cars here in GT3. Ascari, yes, plenty of offs here. Up to 4th, up to 5th, up to 6th again, and then yeah, just a lot of just full throttle here. Probably going over about the 100-metre board. We'll see in a second. Oh, no, sorry, 75-metre board, because they've got the downforce and the lack of weight that they can do that. Through here in 4th, and then wind the throttle back on again, up to 5th, and then up to 6th, and across the line in a second to this time.
51.9 there for Turmo, but Whitmore setting purples out there. 1 minute 50.3 for, obviously, our winner from the first race, but Steve Bolger out there, he's also setting purple first and second sectors. He's looking good, very good in fact, for another pole position here. He's up by 0.6 in the first sector, another 0.3 faster in the middle sector, so 0.9 up at the moment. He's just got to not bin it here on the exit, which he doesn't do, and this should be pole position. It's just a matter by how much. A 1 minute 49.320. That is his fastest lap of the circuit, and he's done it at the right time in qualifying on a shootout lap. So he'll be very happy with that one. And that is a very quick lap. So straight to pole position for Steve Bolger. I don't see that being beaten. But
no, it's going to be a struggle for him to beat him. I think Brendan Ross and Ricky Slick both waiting out to the end of the session to just throw more rubber down on the track, but they didn't have the ultimate 1 lap pace, either of them, to a degree really in that first race. So even with extra tarmac down, I'm not sure they're going to gain the second gap that Bolger's put over second place and then go up further. Cracker's just set a time there. I think he's just popped in a 4th.
Yeah, 53.5 for Cracker. Obviously he didn't do a qualifying lap first time around, but he gets one out this time, and he's 10th faster than River Whisper, who set a 1 minute 53.6. And Glenn Miles, pardon me, and I think Luke Joyner out on a time lap at the moment. So we'll watch. I do believe Glenn Miles is the first one out on track of the 2.
Oh, I just saw someone.
I did see smoke somewhere behind Glenn Miles there. I think that's Luke Joyner. Yeah, so
no, I don't think that was Joyner. It might have been, unless okay, she could have been Joyner. I think I was following someone that wasn't Joyner, so might have been Joyner.
I think it was Joyner, because he's the only one. I'm looking at the track map on Live Races, and he is behind Glenn Miles, and there's no one else really in the vicinity. fact, wasn't too bad a middle sector from Luke Joyner, truth be told. 37.6, which is the third fastest middle sector so far, but his first sector was a bit off everybody else's. But Miles about to cross the start-finish line. He sets a 56.3, not quite as good as his effort in the first qualifying session, I believe. And Luke Joyner pops up to P4, so he sets a 52.6. He's very decent in the middle sector. His first sector probably wants to find a couple tenths. And his last sector as well probably wants to find a tenth or two as well. Alright, so it looks like Gary Neville is the only one on a time lap, but we will have Brendan Ross and Ricky Slick once Neville's lap is over to watch. Looks like Ross is going to give Ricky Slick a bit of a tow by look of it, as Ross does a bit of a drifting impression coming out of the first chicane there, but it's Gary Neville going through Grand to Curb. Curb Grande.
Yeah, just keeping an eye on Liveracers, just waiting for him to set that first sector time.
He's 7 tenths down on the pole time. And he's locked up there at the first chicane, but he's kept it going though.
Yeah, so that was pretty good actually. Pretty good run through the second part of the chicane actually, which would have helped negate some of the time we would have lost locking up through the first part.
He's got the first Lesmo right, coming up to second Lesmo now as we ride on board this machine. He takes the second Lesmo in fourth. I don't think anyone else does that. He did ride on board in qualifying one and he did the same thing, so that's just how he takes it. A lot of other people take it in third, but he feels it gets better traction that way. He's second down in the middle sector. Not too bad though. That'd be a 1 minute 50.3 if he can maintain it in the final sector, but he doesn't have the greatest run through Ascari. He didn't quite set up the final part of it, but still gives himself a decent shot of qualifying in the top four.
Yeah.
In fact, top three even actually, if he get this final corner right.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a very, very spaced out top three at the moment, so there is plenty of room for him to slot in there if he's got the pace in the final sector.
And he crosses the line, 1 minute 50.993. So not a bad lap once again. Very solid from Gary Neville. He'll just be hoping to put it together in the race this time. And now we've got Brendan Ross out on a lap. So we'll ride on board, just above the, or on top of the roll hoop. And next to the chicane in second, once again slides on the exit. That would have cost him a little bit of time there.
Yeah, for comparison, I'm just watching Ricky. He took the chicane in first, so he wanted a better drive as opposed to Ross. Will probably want a bit more stability, but with a slide, we can see that didn't quite pan out the way he wanted it to.
Down to first gear for the second chicane for Rossi. He's down by 8 tenths. So once again, that sliding in the first chicane not helping him at all. See why he blew his engine, very aggressive on the downshifts there. And he takes first, he takes Lesmo 1 in fourth, so doesn't go down to third for that one. And down to third, oh, big slide. Got on the curb and it unsettled the rear, but he held it.
Ricky meanwhile third through both of those Lesmos.
But I think that he's got quite different gearing setup for his car compared to everybody else's. Anyway, brakes at about 60 metres for Ascari. Sort of maintained actually that gap in the middle sector, so very solid through the midsection. So he did a very similar thing in qualifying one actually, where he was 8 tenths down at the first split and sort of maintained that gap to Whitmore throughout the rest of the lap. Turned in just a little bit too early and had to unwind the steering wheel going into Parabolica. So that would have cost him a little bit of time. He crosses the line 50.1, so he does move up in front of Whitmore, and he maintained once again 8-tenth gap. And Ricky Slick, who was a little bit quicker through the first two sectors than Ross, was 3 tenths faster in the middle sector, but he lost 2 tenths in the mid and lost further 3 tenths in the final sector. So Bolger once again on pole as Ricky Slick loses both his legs in a horrific accident with Brendan Ross. So once again, Steve Bolger on pole. Brendan Ross will start alongside him this time with Ricky Slick in third, Whitmore in fourth, Gary Neville 5th, Turbo 6th, Joyner 7th, Cracker 8th, River Whisper 9th, and Glenn Miles in 10th.
Yeah, unfortunately, Brownie also not making it in for qualifying there. I believe he's still having track issues with having the correct track. So it's possible. I mean, there's a few versions of Monza that have been floating around Automobilista Australia recently for various series. There was the GT3 Monza. There was the Formula 4, the Formula Trainer Monza, and
It
it's
is the
possible
same
that
version for the trainers, I
it's the same
believe.
version.
So
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it was. I'm pretty sure I made Scruff update that version because I know the GT3 one was the version 1 of that track, while the Formula Trainer one was the version 2. So I don't know. Perhaps he's installed the wrong one, or I've put the wrong link up or something. But yeah, obviously it's having a little bit of trouble there. Anyway, we'll just take a short break, but race 2 will be just around the corner shortly.
All right. What's it back? A brownie. He is dead. Okay. So I say, because he's in spectating. And normally, if you're in spectating, that you wouldn't have track mismatch issues to then get into race. At least that's my thinking. Because you sort of show all the same files, so okay. Yeah, I was thinking if he's able to get into spectate, then track issues. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Good idea. What is it? Reverse grid? Yeah, probably.
Alright, and we are back for race 3. So sorry about the long break there, just had to go and get myself some chocolate and got a drink, so we're all good to go. Alright, we're about to get racing once again. The formation lap is underway for race 2. And we've got Steve Bolger once again leading us away from pole position. He'll be hoping to get another pretty decent start, but this time he'll be hoping not to obviously fluff it and have an off on his own. Still managed second in the first race, but he'll be hoping for a clean one this time out. Alongside him though, Brendan Ross. See, he doesn't have Wayne Whitmore to get stuck behind this time. He'll be on the front row starting from P2. Ricky Slick will start P3. And then Wayne Whitmore put in a decent lap, but not a great one. So he'll start P4. Behind him, Gary Neville, P5. Termo, again, he can do better, as we've seen just looking at live races. He can go a little bit quicker, but just can't quite put it all together at this stage. He'll start P6, as we've had Glenn Miles have a spin coming out of the second chicane there. Luke Joyner will start P7. He was just asking for a setup in the warm-up. Hopefully someone did send him one. And then we've got Cracker in P8. River Whisper P9. And Glenn Miles recovering. And he will start in P10. So, we've got one race in the books already. And we've seen already, obviously, very reminiscent of the first couple rounds of the Formula Trainers, where we had people took them a little while to get to grips with the cars, with errors being obviously a pretty common occurrence. But I think these cars do offer, I think these guys, a little bit better chance of racing. Obviously the track's going to be a little bit bigger this time out, so they're not going to be as tight or twisty. Obviously Monza, if it does remain close, we should see some slipstream snakes, and hopefully we see another dead heat like we saw in a couple of the Formula Trainer races.
Yeah, in terms of pace through qualifying, it really is Bolger's race to lose again. If he ends up flat spotting it again and having small little issues, it will be his race lost. But we're definitely going to see. I think we're going to see again, as we saw in the first race, especially in the initial stages, Bolger's going to disappear at the front. But from there, the gaps were small enough in between drivers that Slipstream will make up those gaps. So we're probably going to see Ross, Slick, Whitmore, Gary Neville possibly in as there as well. I believe Termo was possibly too far back from Neville. But possibly at least that next 4, if not next 5, are going to if they can keep similar pace up to where they're doing in qualifying. Yeah, we're probably going to definitely see a Slipstream snake from them.
I think it's all about obviously the start obviously, but also the first chicane. But we're just about to get underway. There's 3 lights, 4, and we've got 5, and we wait, and we're away. Bolger, pretty decent start. Looks like Rossi bogged down. In fact, Bolger got a cracking start. He's got at least half a second, possibly a second already. Ricky Slick going to the inside, having a look at Brendan Ross. And who's that in? That's Luke Joyner. He had a decent start as well. He's up 2, and in fact, Rossi outbroke himself, and he's parked it on the exit. So unfortunately, a little bit of contact there for a few of the guys after. In fact, Aaron Hebel there sort of drifting off into no man's land there, but he gets going, thankfully. Yeah, just Brendan Ross just outbroke himself there. Just have a look on the replay. Outbroke himself, locked that right front brake on the anti-cut on the big sausage curve, and then he just went nowhere. And unfortunately, Termo nowhere to go, as did Gary Neville. We'll whisper Glenn Miles and Gary Neville. But back at the front, Ricky Slick's had a pretty decent run through the second chicane. Perhaps a mistake from Bolger as we're looking at the replay. And Ricky Slick now right under the gearbox. Or not maybe right under the gearbox, but certainly within slipstream range of Steve Bolger. And they've got a 9/10 over Whitmore behind.
Yeah, but I was talking about the aero watch, about as close as you want to get to another Formula 3 car before you have to start changing your driving style. But yeah, he's benefited from mistakes of Whitmore there. he's making a run into him now. He didn't have the pace, but if he can get past him and hold him off, that changes story
Ricky Slick
entirely.
having a look into Parabolica. Bolger gives him the room. And Ricky Slick will have to slipstream down the main straight. To apologise to cut you off there, but obviously a move for the lead. Out of all that first corner, obviously incident, obviously Luke Joyner has moved up to P4, so he got a decent start. Was already up a couple of spots before the first chicane, but now he's up in P4, and Ricky Slick up the inside. Breaks later than Bolger, and he does take the lead, but now he's got to obviously be wary of the slipstream as Bolger gets very squirrely under acceleration out of the chicane. And in fact, in that last sector, Whitmore gaining 0.3 of a second on these two. As Bolger with the slipstream fights back. He's going to try and go up the inside of the De La Rosier chicane. And, well, Ricky Slick holds on around the outside, and that's brought Wayne Whitmore into play. And also, I think Luke Joyner did run wide at the chicane, but he's also closing in. So it was a 2-car battle, now it's a 3-car battle. In fact, Bolger very scruffy through the first Lesmo, and that's given Whitmore a very good sniff, and it's given Ricky Slick just a little bit of respite as the 2 cars behind him battle it out.
Yeah, that was a well fought position there by Ricky Slick. It wasn't nearly given to him. He had to work that over the first and part of the second sector there to eventually get the gap and the spot over Bolger, he's just ran wide, and I think Whitmore ran wide again.
He tried to go around the outside of Bolger going into Ascari, and he turned in, but obviously Bolger's Prema car was right there. They both ran wide subsequently, and let's put Whitmore into the clutches of Joyner, who's now up to P3, and Brendan Ross, he's not too far behind him either. Gap says 3.8, but it's certainly less than that now. And Whitmore holds on, but Joyner will get the slipstream, as will Ross behind. P4 and 5.
Yeah, so they've broken off. We've lost the leader. Unfortunately, Bolger's just out of slipstream range of Ricky at the moment. He had better pace than Ricky across in a 1-lap pace setting, but it depends on how they're running with fuel and other car settings and the like, as whether that's replicable in the race. But yeah,
Joyner got the move done on Whitmore, and did see Ricky Slick did lock up into the first chicane, and it sort of balked Whitmore a little bit. He had to take evasive action and clip the sausage curb, which disrupted him and slowed him down massively. And now he's got Brendan Ross right behind him, and Ross will have a go into the De La Rosier chicane. And he pulled out of it at the last minute. Would have flat spotted both his front tyres there, but thankfully, incident is avoided. But this race so far produced much more racing than the first. Obviously, these guys are getting a bit more comfortable in these cars, and now we're seeing some good battles as we see Whitmore wide at the second Lesmo, and he might have just clipped the barrier, but he has half spun now. And he's got to wait really for a clear gap to safely rejoin the track, and he does, thankfully, and he rejoins in 8th. So I'll just have a replay and see if what's he done. He's just locked a brake and wide, lost the rear end a little bit as well in the middle corner, so he's done everything wrong there. And there's that half spin, and then he's had to wait. So that's dropped him down to 8th now. Unfortunately, it's sort of killed a bit of a battle, because I reckon he would have had a go at Joyner at some point as well, who Joyner runs wide at Parabolica. That's going to allow Brendan Ross to gain a bit more time on him. So that's spread things out just a little bit. Ricky Slick a 49.8, and that is beaten by Bolger with a 49.5. So these two at the front travelling very, very quickly. And in fact, Brendan Ross in that last lap set of 49.7 on this lap. A bit slower, obviously, with a bit of battling between himself and Whitmore. But the pace picking up quite nicely.
Yeah, there. Some good to see some speed. I just saw someone line up the brakes. It probably was Brendan Ross out of the in the wheels. He's getting very snaky with these cars. We saw it when he was battling with Whitmore, and I was very surprised actually that that wasn't an actual collision. We were lucky there. The hitboxes went 100% accurate, because I saw the extreme nose cone of Ross's car passing through the gearbox of Whitmore's car. Had there been the full hitboxes, that would have been it would have tipped him into a spin. But yes, some good pace starting to come out now. It's Ricky's just starting to move away. He's actually seeming to hold a pretty similar gap. They're both sort of trading fastest times, which aren't too different from each other. So they're getting him and Bolger are lapping similar paces. So actually keeping the gap pretty similar, which is just outside of the range that Bolger really could use as a slipstream to make an overtake and to get some more action going.
Behind them, Rossi has caught up to the back of Luke Joyner, but Joyner, Ross did get a good run coming out of the second Lesmo, but the straight line speed of Joyner enabled him to stay in front, but then Joyner just outbroke himself and ran wide at Ascari out onto the gravel, which is, in these cars, you do not want to be, and that dropped him a spot. Obviously, Ross as well also ran a little bit wide and cost himself time to the cars in front, but either way, it's moved Ross up to P3. And Ricky Slick on that last lap, 10th faster than Steve Bolger. So these two, very, very quick. Very, very close. So Ricky Slick has upped his game from the first race. And he's throwing down the gauntlet with 5 laps to go as he slides. Oh, and behind him, Bolger tried to do the same thing, but went a little bit too far. And then even Ross is drifting it out of out of turn 2 as well. So everybody's sliding out of the first chicane. It's just like Oprah Winfrey giving away gifts. You get a slide, I get a slide, everybody gets a slide. Unfortunately for Bolger, he got more than the slide. He got the spin, and he's now got to deal with Brendan Ross behind. And what it was going to bring up in the first race that didn't get a chance to, but after lap 5, these tyres do get a little bit dicey. So if you haven't set your car up, or if you're not really adjusting to the changing tyres and car around you, as you've just seen from Steve Bolger, they will bite. So that's something to look out for throughout this series. Towards the end of races, those rear tyres you've got to look out for. Otherwise, you will have a spin or half spin coming out of corners, putting the power down.
Exactly, and that's going to affect anyone who gets stuck into a bit of tunnel vision. It's going to happen if you're battling or just trying to catch the car in front of you. You're so focused on the pace that you get to keep an eye on what's happening around the car, and even the edges of your screen can actually tell you where tyre life and temps are at. And yeah, then it's very easy to have a mistake just only based on you didn't make those minute adjustments to your driving style to suit the fact that tyres are starting to go off. Which is something which you do pick up a lot, and it's good that they do go off because it models what you do pick up in other series over longer races, of course. It's not like the GT3s. After you go through the first 10 or 15 or so laps, and the tyres do start to go, and especially if you're running something like the Boatleys, the weight that they've got, you do have to then adjust slightly to not go pitching into a gravel trap.
Ross very late under brakes and closing in on Steve Bolger. Might have even been a little bit of a tap there, coming out of the chicane, and once again, Brendan Ross lighting the rears up. But this time, doesn't lose as much time as he did last lap, but still, when you're trying to battle with someone sliding like that, doesn't help. Behind them, what's that Turmo? He's slowly edging closer towards Luke Joyner. Or he was on that last lap. He actually lost about, well, it was about half a tenth, if that. But that gap between these two, very, very, well, once again, actually a little bit smaller, 2.1 seconds. And in front of them, Bolger and Ross battling it out with 4 laps to go. Once again, Ricky Slick, just like the first race, he's in a position to win the race. And with timescale where it now changed to normal, I believe, he shouldn't blow an engine this time, barring something catastrophic. So all eyes at the moment between positions 2 and 3, and Brendan Ross and Steve Bolger. Bolger was the pole sitter as Ross runs wide and stays out of the barrier somehow. But Bolger, he was the pole sitter by a considerable margin, but in the race he just doesn't quite have the pace. Perhaps he just tightens up a little bit, or he's just not quite confident or overconfident with his tyres, and that leads to little mistakes that cost him lap time throughout a stint.
Yeah, I'm just having a look at Brent's car now. It looks like he might just be the way I'm looking at. I do also remember that Monza's quite bumpy, but it looks like he might have a flat spot on his front tyres, which would make sense with some of the with some of the sort of smoke shows we've seen around him. But yeah, he's up pace wise with Bolger. And I think Bolger unfortunately is suffering just purely as a result of the tyre life. He has got the ability to put out brilliant one-lap qualifying pace, but he hasn't. I don't think he's necessarily developed a driving style to then suit the full 10 laps of a race, especially with the tyre wear as it is, and that's possibly what's cooling his chances for a win.
That said, on that last lap, he did set a 49.8, so he was
He
able
did,
to
true.
he was able to withstand the pressure from Ross, and was able to actually claw back quite a bit of time on Ricky Slick. But Ricky Slick's got a bit of time up his sleeve. And going back to Rossi, he does lock up into turn 1 quite a lot. That right front tyre, and I think I'm seeing the same thing as you. If those with the eagle eye, obviously it's not the stream isn't the highest of quality as Brendan Ross drifts it through Lesmo too. But yeah, if you do look at that front right tyre of Brendan Ross, there is a darker chunk, and I do believe he's got a little bit of a flat spot, or at least it looks like it on our screen. So his screen will be vibrating quite a bit. Behind them, looks like Luke Joyner has actually put a bit of time on Turbo. I think Turbo's made a mistake in the middle sector. So it was 1.9 and then it was 3.4. So let's have a look. Oh, a bit of a drift for Turbo as well. But he held it. And looks very manly of him there. Just getting the rear out there like that and saving the tank slapper. But it's cost him time. We've got yellows out. Who is it?
Bolger.
What's happened to Bolger? What has happened? He's ripped his front wing off. He has ripped his front wing off at Ascari. So he's pushing very hard through the final part. He's ran wide. He did what Ross did a couple laps ago, but he kept his foot in it. And then the dirt or the gravel just forced him into the barrier on the right-hand side. There goes his front wing, and then he's just understeered off at Parabolica. And now he has retired. So absolute nightmare for Steve Bolger. Started from pole in both races, and unfortunately, he's not been able to convert either of them. As Whitmore, he moves up from 8th now to 7th. He's had a very shocking run in this one, but he's still going out there. And he's got...
Yeah, this, as I say, the off for Bolger promotes Joyner into a podium spot this time, but it looks like he's suffering from a very similar flat spot to Ross.
Yeah, that front right of his...
It actually looks worse.
That front right of his certainly got a bit of a chink in it. And once again, a bit of smoke there at second Lesmo, so perhaps Ross in front just locking up once again. It's just looking at the sector times at the moment. Luke Joyner's actually putting some decent splits at the moment. 35.9 in the first sector isn't bad, but he's dropping the middle sector where he's dropping a lot of time. Perhaps obviously he did pull away from Ross, and Ross was white behind him in the slips. Well, when he pulled out of the slipstream earlier on, so perhaps he's running a lot less wing than those around him. So that's why he's got the fast first sector, but can't quite stick it out in the middle.
Yeah, another big wobble there for Brendan Ross. He came out at the end of Parabolica. Possibly just, tyres also getting to Brendan Ross. Was there a lot of wheels, and possibly at the point where even at the fast corners, the downforce can't compensate for the lack of grip the tyres are now providing.
Yes, as we just cut to Ross, and once again, lock up into the first corner and a massive drift out of it. So he certainly loves sliding that thing around. And then we go back to Joyner and his very smooth and careful under throttle. And the gap between himself and Turbo sort of remained at about 3.7 throughout that last lap.
Look, another lock there, possibly, I think the front right again from Ross on the way into that second chicane. I think he's just, as it goes especially with the tyre life, he's just doing more and more to his tyres.
And Luke Joyner just cut to it. He's cut the second chicane there, so we'll just have a look and see what he's done. He's out-broke himself. No, he just lost the back end and decided it was safer, so he cut the chicane, then continue trying to make the turn. And looking at that on replay, it was the smartest decision because it's kept him going. And in fact, it looks like it's actually gained him a little bit of time. Then again, that was the first sector where he's very quick, and the sector line is before the chicane. And he's run wide again. He did do this in the first race as well, where he was in a podium position and almost threw it away on the last lap. And once again, Turmo, if he just keeps it straight, Luke Joyner might give him a chance if he keeps driving the way he did in the first race and the way he's done so far on this lap.
Yeah, this third spot on the podium is all Joyner still is now, and he's been not intentionally necessarily, but he's been throwing it off the track a couple of times this race, and he does it again. Or Turmo finds some pace in this last lap, and it'll be given to Turmo instead.
Is 3.4 or was 3.4 seconds? What will it be? 1.9. So it's lost 1.5 seconds by going wide there.
Looks like another big lock up there from Brennan Ross in that first chicane. Looking at another front right again. So that tyre is going full cubist at the moment.
Yes, the old 50-cent piece. Ricky Slick, this is the final lap of the race. You see Ricky Slick, once he got away from Steve Bolger, he's never really been headed. And it was looking like this would happen in the first race, but obviously blew his engine, as did Brendan Ross. But looks like they'll both make it to the finish this time out. Behind them, the gap between Turmo and Joyner, it's actually gone out once again. Looks like Joyner again faster in that first split by about half a second. It's all going to be about Turmo in this middle sector. If you can just be obviously a little bit quicker this time out, perhaps obviously spook Joyner when they come to the obviously next split line at the top of this hill, and it might spook him into a mistake.
Yeah, he's going to try, and it's going to be hard to do it in the conventional way, but he needs to put his as much pressure on Joyner to try and force him to make a mistake, because he has shown he's done it before, and it's felt to Joyner to just keep the head down, keep the focus on for the last couple of corners. It's very easy to, as we saw already with Bolger, to send it wide in the braking zone here, and if he does that, I mean, it could just be more than a loss of position. It could be a loss of a finishing position in this race to begin. There.
Yeah, but Ricky Slick has crossed the line, and he has taken the second race of the evening and of the series. And Brendan Ross finishes 6.3 seconds adrift. And Luke Joyner does hold on to the podium position. The final gap between himself and Turbo, 1.3 seconds. See. And then behind them, Cracker will come home in P5 with Gary Neville down in P6. Once again, Gary Neville will be a bit annoyed, obviously getting caught up in that first lap, first corner carnage. See, that dropped him to the back of the field, but he fought back and got a solid P6. River Whisper will cross the line for 7th place. And Whitmore is at a frustrating second race. In fact, he's had another off on the last lap. He did a 2:08 last time out. Well, last lap out, and then this one hasn't been particularly great either. But he'll cross the line in P8. So, not the greatest start to his season. And he shows his disgust by driving it into the wall. And now we await Glenn Miles, who's still got a sector to go. He's not going to finish a lap down this time.
Yeah, he's lucky having to keep on the lead lap. I think it's just, again, possibly reducing the level of mistakes. His outright pace isn't too far off the rest of the field. It's just mistakes, which is what unfortunately everyone in the field has fallen into this race. But he has managed to keep on the lead lap of this race, which does mean he does finish. And he's classified by live races as he finished as well.
Yes, so this time, obviously, he will get his points, unless he DNFs with, 300 metres or so to spare. But Ricky Slick takes the second race, takes his first win of the season. Glenn Miles, there it is, will finish in P9. So that's 2 races down, and now that means, well, we're going to have a warm-up session. So we'll take a short break, but after that, obviously, break, we'll obviously go over the circuit, and we'll bring up the track overlay and go, hopefully, if there's someone out on a track, we'll go over on a lap with you. And obviously, we'll have the reverse grid race, which after that last race will probably be a little bit more carnage as well, going into that first chicane.
Definitely, yeah. It'll be interesting to see how that turns out.
But we shall take a break, but we'll be back shortly. Alright, so welcome back. Obviously, still got a fair amount of time left in the warm-up, but as you can see on your screen, just a reminder of tonight's proceedings. Obviously, the location, Monza, circuit length 5.793 kilometers. So we've got 3 races. The third race and final race of the evening, being the reverse grid race, is coming up in about 7 or so minutes time. Got 10 laps, plus obviously the formation lap, and this circuit 11 turns. And 11 turns, it's not many, as you can see on your screen there. It's not a very complicated circuit, but oh boy, it is a tricky one. Very surprising. Obviously, you've got to be very precise with your braking. You've got to be precise with your throttle placement. And you've got to be very precise with how you use the curbs as well. And that's something that these guys, as we've seen tonight, have struggled with a little bit.
Yeah, there's not a lot of the only sort of real technical parts of this track. Not a lot of them. It's a lot of straights, a lot of medium and high speed corners. So especially in terms of straights and high speed corners, there's not a lot involved in sort of getting them right. It's all the time is gained here through the chicanes and through the low speed corners and in speed corners. And if you can't get, that's where you gain or lose speed. It's really simple to get the back straight and the front straight pretty much right. That's all you really to do is once you're on them is just kick the foot flat to the floor and hope you got a bit less error than the guy next to you, so you go a little bit faster. But it really pushes the pressure then on how you treat the chicanes and the like to get around the track and to make up your pace, and that's why you can see such big differences, because a tenth out of something like a Scari will end up at a second or half a second at the end of that straight, and then if you stuff up again through that last corner, it'll come out to maybe a second and a half that you've lost since the Scari by stuffing up a Scari and that last corner. So it's an easy track, and that's what makes it such a tricky track, if that makes any sense.
Simple layout, but yeah, difficult to execute. I know I've brought it up a couple of times, obviously in the form of trainers, and a couple of times over the Rookie Cup seasons, and it's something I tell a lot of the guys when I do jump in practice for these rookie nights and the like, is that a lot of them they don't think of the corner exits a lot. They like, okay, I'm going to carry a lot of speed. I made it through the corner. I hit the apex, but they've even though they've gone through the corner quickly, they've either run wide on the exit, or because of the way they've taken the corner, it's washed off speed by the time they should be on the throttle, but instead they're off the throttle, and it just costs them time, obviously, down the straights. So that's something we have seen as well. And then when you are in those situations, sometimes you get a bit panicky, and then you try and get on the throttle, you slam it down, and in these cars you cannot do it with obviously there being no traction control available to bail them out this season. So hopefully, as the season goes on, we see people just start to think ahead just a little bit more, even though it's not in a racing sense, it's just, getting around the lap. But if you think about the exit, especially on this track, and it doesn't matter what car, if you think about the exit, you get a good exit, you're going to set a decent lap time, because pretty much every corner has got a long straight after it, aside from obviously the second chicane and the first Lesmo. Every other corner after that, that isn't obviously the initial part of a chicane, yeah, the exits lead on to a big straight, and even if you like your stuff up just a little bit, you might lose, say, a half a second at the point of the corner. By the end of the straight, you could have lost 3 or 4 tenths of a second. So it's something for these guys to hopefully consider and pick up as the season goes on.
Exactly. Yeah, it's something that if you feel like not everyone feels like they're going to go in and stuff the corner up at all, part of a corner, but you almost need to drive in a way that you really put more emphasis on the second part of things like chicanes, especially around here, because you can mildly balls up the first part of, like, I'm watching Balls at the moment, he can mildly balls up the first part of that chicane as long as he gets the exit right. That's what's going to give him the speed down the next straight. So if you're gonna end up just as a rookie ballsing up a corner or part of a corner, make it the one that doesn't matter so much. Make it the first part of the first 2 chicanes. Make it the first of the 2 Lesmos. Make it the first part of a Ascari. Although really, Ascari is not really separated apart, so you sort of have to get the floats, take the speed through the entirety of the chicane. But yeah, you really need to focus on getting the best speed out of those corners that all lead onto those big straights, because that's where you're gonna, as we said, that's where you're gonna lose most of your time.
Yeah, so I've just jumped on board Steve Bolger, and this next corner, Ascari, next chicane, Ascari is one of the big ones. You've got to compromise the mid part of it. So obviously you come in, break about 100 metres for this first part, use a bit of curb, and then you can go flat for about a second or so, but then you've got to back out of it and set yourself up for this next part, which a lot of people have been getting wrong, as you saw Steve Bolger did right there. You should be setting yourself up for that left-hand part, so you want to try and hug the right-hand side as much as you can, and then you can go full throttle through the left-hand part and not run wide on the exit, as we saw Steve Bolger did, obviously just then, and obviously as we saw during the race. So that's something that a lot of guys still having a little bit of trouble with, and this circuit as a whole looks a lot like that. You carry a lot of speed through this first chicane, through turn 1, but you can also cause a bit of a pendulum effect if you carry too much and you end up losing the back end.
Yeah, it is important to note though, Tyler Paker did stuff. It's part of the pace that Bolger is pulling. He did stuff up Ascari, but he has still put the 3rd best time since basically today of the night down in that lap there. But yeah, you really got to treat the middle part of Ascari as you don't have to treat it as a corner. You have to treat it just as a bit of track that you need to use, and you treat it as the entry of the second part of the chicane rather than as its own corner. And you do that exactly that. You're meant to run around the sort of the apex curbing to the end, so you can open up that last part of the chicane, so you can maximize your time spent. Minimize time spent off full throttle through that corner. Get on the throttle earlier, straighten the steering earlier, and get better speed and VMAX down the end of the straight.
Yeah, I think the way when I jumped in Discord in voice chat early on, it sort of opened my eyes just a little bit. In that they come to a circuit like Monza, and they're not really thinking so much about. Obviously, there's lots of long straights, and you should take wing off. Like people are just thinking, oh, why aren't I going fast on default setup with all this wing on? And it's similar to you're trying to maximize the top speed and the exit of each corner. And sometimes it requires giving up just a little bit through one corner to get a better lap time overall. And that's something that is lost on a few guys. But anyway, we've just started the formation lap of the 3rd and final race of the night, the reverse grid race. So we probably will see a bit of carnage into this corner that Glenn Miles is leading us through. And he will start us from pole. Alongside him is River Whisper in 2nd. Cracker will start in 3rd place, followed by Luke Joyner, who's in a good position actually. If he stays trouble-free, could find himself on the podium once again. And then we've got Turmo in P5. He'll be hoping just to have a nice clean race this time out. I do believe he was one of the cars involved in that first lap incident that was of no fault of his own. He'll start P5 for this one. Then we've got Gary Neville in P6. He had his race badly compromised with that incident we just spoke of. Wayne Whitmore, he'll be hoping to, not make any mistakes, get a better start as well, and hopefully get himself a nice result in this 3rd and final race to make up for what was a shocking race for him. And by his standards, in the 2nd race, he starts 7th. Ricky Slick, well, we know he's a very fast starter, and he's able to make up lots of spots on the first lap. So he'll have another opportunity there in P8. And we've got Brendan Ross in P9, the Driftmaster himself. And we've got Steve Bolger, who will start at the back, and he'll be hoping for a much cleaner run this time out, and hoping for a mistake-free race, but with lots of cars in front of him, that might be a little bit difficult.
Yeah, that's the thing, and I think fingers crossed, Touchable we don't get Turn 1 Monza Chaos, but if it does happen, Boulder's going to benefit hugely by just backing off, 20 minutes before he would normally brake, and just in the brake there, and just let everything play in front of him, and then try and pick his way through that first corner. If he comes barreling in with everyone else, he's going to get caught up in it. But he's in a bad spot, but he's also in possibly the best spot because he's going to have the most time to react if something goes down.
Yeah, sometimes though it's all about being in the right place in the right time, and sometimes it's about being in the wrong place at the wrong time, as poor old Gary Neville found out last time out. So hopefully, as you said, we get through the first chicane or the first lap nice and clean, and everybody's able to have a nice race and have a consistent race. We'd like to see battles from start to finish this time out. Obviously, you had more battles in the second race, but they didn't quite sustain themselves in the entire race. Hopefully, we go just a bit better this time and it lasts throughout the race. But the drivers are forming up onto the grid. Now, River Whisper out there near the pit wall there, going for a bit of a wander, but we're just forming up now. And thankfully, the drivers have listened to the briefing and have listen to not stuff around when forming up, because these cars do overheat. But anyway, we're about to get underway. Lights out and we are racing. Looks like Steve Bolger got a fantastic start out the back and he's forced out onto the apron. And Glenn Miles also solid start from him. They're 3 wide in the mid-pack there, and I think that's Luke Joyner into the lead. We've had an incident. I don't know who that was. Just have a look on the replay there, but there was an incident.
Went firing out the inside.
So we'll just have a look on the replay and have a look and see what happened here. There's a lot of cars locking up, and oh yeah, that's like Whitmore got absolutely smacked from behind. Let's just trying to see who that is. That is Whitmore's now. He's missing a front wing. I think it was Cracker that barreled up the back of him, and it looks like, unfortunately, Whitmore, yes, he's the first retirement. So, unfortunately, Monza struck. We got through the first race somehow with no incident. This time around, though, we've unfortunately got a DNF at the third corner. But Joyner's got a couple-second lead over Glenn Miles behind him. There's an angry pack of cars behind River Whisper with Steve Bolger,
Ricky Slick.
Ricky Slick, and I think it was Gary Neville, all very tightly packed together. And Glenn Miles runs wide there, and that's going to make it even more congested down the back straight, and they're 4 wide.
Oh, no, you don't.
4 wide. Oh, and we've got, I think that's Cracker, lost it at the back there. He's lost his rear wing. And we're going 4 wide into Parabolica. That is very risky. And Glenn Miles off. He goes into the boonies. He hasn't got any damage, I don't think. But out of all that, River Whisper holds on. But he's got Bolger and Neville on his inside. And he's got Ricky Slick on his outside. And then there's Brendan Ross right behind, looking like he wants a bit of the action as well.
How any of this hasn't been a major pile-up, I'm completely surprised.
Well, don't speak too soon. We're coming up to turn 1.
Finding some wood.
And also a little bit of a serve from Neville to Ricky Slick, and Ross loses the back end but holds it just. And Steve Bolger, he's up 8 spots now. He's 4 seconds behind Luke Joyner after the first lap. As Neville out on the would have been the marbles as well as the aero wash, almost forced him off the grand curve. Ricky Slick now having to look up the inside as Neville locks up, but he holds on for now. But Ricky Slick trying to get the switch back and having a look at first Lesmo. Neville gives him the space, and Ricky Slick up to P3.
This is the words just aren't coming. It's just nuts.
There's too much action, not enough time to speak words. And behind them, it's like River Whisper is going to lose out to Brendan Ross, and there's Turbo. He's lurking there as well. We've got a car off. That's Joyner. Joyner's had a spin at Ascari. He's had his troubles there in race 1 and 2, and that's going to drop him down to at least P7. And we've had another incident as Brendan Ross is spun around as well on the exit. I don't know if he got served or if he just outbroke himself.
He was lucky. He's lucky to. I think he might be beached in there as well. Actually, he's struggling to get it out.
So we'll just have a look from the TV cam. Let's see what he's done. He grabbed a bit of grass on the entry to the final part of it, and in fact he's hit the wall, and then the car's just reset on him. He's hit the wall in such an awkward angle. He's got it going again though, but he's well down at the moment. That incident we saw earlier with Cracker in the background, that's unfortunately led to him not finishing, but this race has been quite topsy-turvy already. But after that spin from Joyner, who had a 4-second lead, that's dropped him down to P6, but now we've got Steve Bolger in the lead, 0.8 of a second over Ricky Slick. And gap between Ricky Slick and Neville was 0.8 of a second. Looks a little bit more than that. Gary Neville in a podium position. He's got 2.5 seconds, or 2.3 seconds now, over River Whisper, but it'll be less than that now as he locks up once again at the De La Rosa chicane. And looks like Turmo there in the background, now braking himself and cutting across the chicane. And he's within striking distance of River Whisper. He will be in slipstream distance. Up ahead, Ricky Slick is in slipstream distance. It's less than 0.8 of a second now between himself and Bolger. And he's setting himself up nicely for a run. There's a little bit of a lock up there from Bolger in front. And Scary, but yeah, Ricky Slick setting himself up nicely for a run into Parabolica, and if not Parabolica, certainly into the first chicane.
Yeah, I think he might just be. Well, I say that he's just getting quite heavily in the slipstream. He might put a dive on here, or not necessarily a dive, but he's going to force Bolger to run it wide. But he's just far enough back, so it's probably going to be a run into the first chicane.
He's just sticking his nose in. I don't think there's so much to try and overtake, more so to put off Bolger, and he did. It did force Bolger to go a little bit wide and compromise his exit with Parabolica. And now Bolger defensive early. He's going to force Ricky Slick to go to the outside as the apron runs off and turns into grass. Ricky Slick around the outside. Bit of a lock up there from Bolger, but Ricky Slick around the outside takes the lead. But now it's Ricky Slick's turn once again to punch a big hole in the air for Steve Bolger to close up and try and get past.
Yeah, and it's Bolger's got the speed. It looks like he's actually just brought him up on the side now. He's probably going to go back on him into this second chicane.
He's going to get it done. He's run wide. Oh, there's a bit of air time and just nudged the barrier. So just outbroke himself. Those anti-cut sausage curbs are brutal. And these cars being as low as they are, they do affect the car quite a lot. Behind them, so River Whisperer made a mistake because Turmo's right behind him. But once again, Ricky Slick into the lead. Gary Neville now, he's up to P2. Having a nice run. I think Mr. Neville's probably hoping that Bolger and Ricky Slick would battle it out for a bit more and get himself into play, but either way, he's now up into P2. Bolger dropped down to P3. Looks like Turmo, he must have made a mistake somewhere, I think at the second Lesmo, because he's dropped quite a bit of time to River Whisper and Bolger in front. He's run wide again at Ascari, and thankfully the gravel didn't bounce him into the air, but he's trying to sort some kind of issue out, because he was weaving down the straight leading up to Ascari. And there's Luke Joyner, fair way back, and then Brendan Ross all out on his own, as well as Glenn Miles. But in the lead, Ricky Slick, 1 minute 50.9 and a 51.0 for Gary Neville. Then in P3, obviously, Steve Bolger had a bit of a, obviously, we saw that moment from him, 59.4 for him, 55.7 for River Whisper, so he made a mistake, and a 58.6 for Turmo. Behind them in P6, Luke Joyner, 52.2, he'll be ruining that mistake he made on the first lap. He might not be in the lead if he hadn't made that mistake at this point, but he'd certainly be in a podium position. But barring a mistake, he's not going to get, or barring a couple mistakes or failures, he's probably not going to get there now.
Yeah, Joyner's got had the pace at last lap, but to be fair, the couple of guys in front of him are currently involved in a scrap to a degree. But yeah, that early mistake for Joyner. The problem was it wasn't a small one either. To go and stick it in the gravel trap at Ascari, it's a big gravel trap. It's going to take a while to get out of it, and especially because he was that close to being off the lead as well. If he had a bit of a gap to work with, he could have maybe done something a little better with it. But yeah, in general, that was it's never a good time to go off at a scurry, but that was a really bad time to do it. He's got the time to try and recover it, but we're just trying to keep an eye on who's coming through actual clean sectors. We're just going through second sector now. Actually, have a look at the timing, but yeah, Joiner's slower than he's slower than all the guys in front of him. It's only
Sorry
River.
to cut you off, but Termo is he'd closed up pretty closely to River Whisper, who'd made a mistake in the middle sector, but just as he got close enough to probably give himself a good run coming into Parabolica, Termo ran wide and clipped the gravel. That sent his car into the air and around he went, and now he's down to P6 and is going to have to put in a pretty solid shift if he wants to catch up to Luke Joyner in front.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, I was just on board with him for the last part of that spin. He did a great job recovering it because he managed to execute a J-turn right into one of the brakes in the Armco barrier. So actually, just a good use of the mirrors there to get the car backed up in a spot you can actually do without clapping the rear wing off. But aside from that, yeah, not a great way to go through that particular corner.
Unfortunately, that spread things out a bit. So we've got Ricky Slick 4.3 in front of Gary Neville, and then Gary Neville's got 5.5 seconds over Bolger. Although I reckon Bolger might be a chance. If he keeps driving the way he is, he might be a chance right at the end to have at least one shot at getting Gary Neville.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's going to depend looking at the pace. There's only half a second or so between them in the last lap. And we haven't actually had a good look at Neville's sort of mid-race and sort of off-tyre pace. We've been able to keep a good eye on Bolger because that's been what's kept him from battling with Ricky in previous races. But yeah, we haven't actually had I haven't had a good look at Gary's pace. Seems to be making up a little bit of time possibly on Gary, but not a lot. Yeah, as I said, it's a bit of a variable at this stage what Gary's pace is on these used tyres.
Well, Gary put in a very solid first sector, and Steve Bolger responded in the middle sector as Ricky Slick sets the fastest lap of the race. Currently on screen, we've got Termo, who's coming into the clutches of Brendan Ross. Brendan Ross got a fantastic exit and fantastic run through Ascari, and he should be close enough for a run into Parabolica. He pulls out from the slipstream and will take P6 from Termo. And these guys have got 11 seconds from Luke Joyner in front and 15 seconds from River Whisper. And they're about a minute and 10 in front of Glenn Miles. As we see, we've just cut to River Whisper, who's gone around at the first chicane, just outbroke himself and sort of had a half spin. We did see other yellows out. I don't know if that was from
that was Glenn Miles who went off as well.
Yes, yeah, there it is. It was Ross sort of half spinning it, Termo half spinning it at the first chicane. So just there it is. Miles just parked there at the chicane. He's not had a good race so far, Glenn Miles. His fastest lap's at 2:06, so he's well off what he's capable of. And we're 6 laps in, and so only done a 2-minute lap time. That's not good. But through the field, the gap between Bolger and Neville, 3.2 seconds. So this time out in the middle sector, Steve Bolger very, very quick compared to Gary Neville. 36.8 for Bolger, 37.7 for Gary Neville. He also lost half a second in the first sector as well, did Gary Neville. So that at this pace, Bolger will have at least one lap at Gary Neville, but all it takes for Gary Neville at this stage, I reckon, is just to put one solid lap together and then just remain obviously consistent in the 1:50s and get it done. So ideally his next lap he'll want to set a low 1:50, and that will keep Steve Bolger at bay. But if he has a bad lap here, it will give Steve Bolger a very good opportunity to nick P2 right at the
Oh,
end.
someone's gone around. Ricky Slick's gone around in the first chicane.
He has, but he will retain the lead. We'll have a look at that on a replay. Right on board the roll bar cam. Roll hoop. Looks like he's done it on the throttle. Yeah, he wasn't quite straight when he hit the throttle. Rear end wasn't planted, but he was able to spin it pretty quickly back around, and he retains his lead, but he's only got 1.7 seconds now over Gary Neville behind, and that spin would have put a bit of heat and a bit of wear on his rear tyres, so that's something to look out for with these next couple laps remaining. In the front three, as this race concludes, so Gary Neville very wide down the second Lesmo. As this race concludes, is tightening up behind them. River Whisper has got Luke Joyner right behind him. So River Whisper 55.5 on that last lap compared to a 53.0 for Luke Joyner. So Luke Joyner looking very good to nick P4 at the end.
Yeah, not the best recovery drive from Joyner, but I suppose the one good thing is especially from what we've just flicked it on, and what it looks like he has actually managed to get some good racing in at least, which does make races which feel long because of things like a first lap spin. It does help to bring some life back into them, and he's actually about to get into some action here. It looks like he might be about to get through with the brakes.
Yeah, he got a good exit out of Ascari, and even though a bit of trying to break the toe was River Whisper, it's not enough, and Luke Joyner for now will try and, well, he will get there in the end. We'll get P4, but a bit of a slide will give River Whisper a chance. River Whisper didn't want to make it easy for him in the first place. He tried to hold on around the outside, which is never going to happen at Parabolica, but he's got a better exit, and he will hold on, and Luke Joyner will have to pull back into the slipstream and repass him into turn one. So who is the latest on the brakes? They both brake at about the same point. River Whisper leaves the space, and Joyner gets the job done. So good bit of racing between these two. No contact between the two. Obviously plenty of space between them, and Luke Joyner takes P4, 2 laps to go. At the front, Ricky Slick now leads by 1.9. Is almost ended up in the gravel trap as Gary Neville behind does. That will allow Steve Bolger into P2. So it had been coming. Gary Neville on the last lap, I believe, ran very, very close to just clipping the gravel on the exit of the second Lesmo. And this time he does do it, and it's cost him dearly. He should still get a podium from here, but that'll be very frustrating on his end, because he would have gained a little bit of time. Ricky Slick almost did the same thing. So these guys running their tyres right to the limit, even though at this stage you probably just want to relax and tighten up. Relax and just not force the issue too much with these tyres being as trying to find the right word. Is I guess petulant. You get to a certain stage and they just spit the dummy.
Yeah, that would be a good way to think about it. I was just keeping an eye on there goes my words. Keeping an eye on pace, and I believe Bolger is running slightly lower aero than what Ricky's running. He's gaining a couple extra k's an hour down the straights, but that's possibly also what's contributing his sort of advanced speed loss as a result of tyre life, because he's got less downforce then for the corners to be able to compensate for the lack of tyre grip.
Yes, and I'm just cut to him riding on board and did a comparison coming up to the second chicane, and he's also got a lot longer sixth gear. I reckon if he pulled his sixth gear back by 1 click, he'd actually get even more top speed. He did already have about 3 k's or so on Ricky's Slick in front, but if he pulled his sixth gear back a click, he'd probably find another 3 or 4 k's at least.
Yeah, which would be good, because it would make more use of his advantage of more straight line speed, which would hopefully do a little bit more towards bringing up the sort of covering for the lack of cornering pace that he's now got as a result.
That said, though, instead of purple first sector, he did this in the last race, I believe, on the second last lap or last lap. He said a couple of purple sectors instead of fastest lap at the end as Ricky Slick runs very wide on the exit of Ascari, but Steve Bolger's got close enough to capitalise. Pretty solid middle sector, 36.8, which is again another 6/10 faster than Ricky Slick. But Ricky Slick doesn't make a mistake in Parabolica and will hold on to take races 2 and the reverse grid in race 3. Steve Bolger will claim 2 second places, but probably should have had a win in there somewhere. And he finishes 1.6 behind. I'm just waiting, and Gary Neville will finish in P3. And Steve Bolger set his fastest lap of the race with a 1:50.0 on the last lap of the race. Behind them, Luke Joyner has got Brendan Ross 3.5 seconds behind. So Brendan Ross has got past River Whisper. So Luke Joyner P4, Ross right at the end P5, and River Whisper P6. We'll just cut back to a replay and have a look and see what happened. So yeah, Ross was a fair way behind. So River Whisper just taking it very conservative to Ascari. Yes, very poor exit. Is off the power when you need to be flat chat, and Ross just takes him very easily on the exit. And instead of staying in the slipstream, just pulled that nice and early going into the final corner into Parabolica, and that allowed really Ross to hold on around the outside. Turmo now coming up to the final corner, and he will finish. Oh, almost lost it. Running onto the green concrete. He'll finish P7, and Glenn Miles will finish once again 1 lap down in P8.
Yeah, unfortunately for Glenn Miles there, he just couple of spins he got caught up in. It's lucky that that was the last lap actually, because he had another off at chicane at turn 1, and that actually put him off the track. So had that not been the last lap, he would have ended up going 2 laps down there. But yeah, it's good he managed to bring it around to the finish again. Not actually recorded finish by Live Race, unfortunately, but yeah, he did at least manage to get the car to the end.
Yep, and we had 2 retirements, unfortunately, both very early on. Obviously, Wayne Whitmore at the first corner got rear-ended by Cracker, and then Cracker later on, I think on the first lap, had a moment on the exit of Ascari and lost his rear wing, so that was him done as well. So just a quick recap. Obviously, we had Steve Bolger on pole for obviously races 1 and 2, but he couldn't capitalise, unfortunately. Had decent starts this time, but obviously mistakes were made, and right when he needed to obviously stay firm in that first race, he dropped back, and again in the second race, a couple mistakes dropped him down in the field. In that third race, obviously, all those guys did a decent job just to, obviously, in the reverse grid race to avoid the carnage and then get themselves to the front, but he just didn't have the pace at the right time, and just a couple little mistakes costing Bolger again. But I think he will be one to look out for throughout the season, but I think, once again, just consistency for him is the big question mark.
It is, yeah, and that's all it is in this sort of racing, especially once you get qualifying is all about the outright pace, but in the race itself, it's all about consistency, and it's a harder sort of kettlefish to come across the consistency with cars like this, where there's now new things for them to deal with. So to be able to establish consistency this early in the season with a new car it shows a good level of skill and a good ability to pick up a car and run with it, rather than sort of needing a lot of seat time to get used to how the car works.
Yeah, we did see, obviously, guys did pick up fairly quickly. It's just about, obviously, after you do pick it up, it's about just perhaps settling to a level that you can run at for an entire race, and that's something that people do struggle with, where they can drive at a pace that is fairly decent, but in the end, it leads to mistakes as they overdrive it to get to that speed. And I think that's something a couple guys do need to sort of pick up on, is just instead of driving at, say, 101%, they drive it at 99 or 98%, and they get that consistency, and they'll end up getting better results for it.
Exactly, yeah.
But we do have a couple people in here, but being Rookie Cup, I'm not going to have interviews. That's for the big time. So if you guys want to be interviewed, let's get some results in the touring cars, and you will get an interview. So unfortunately, Ricky Slick, you can go back to your trailer park trash home. Next Monday we have the Automobilista Australia Touring Car Championship finale. It is on. After what has to be said, a massive brain fade from James Owen with a lap to go, just deliberately binning his car, gifting Brenton Foley the championship lead by I think 2 or 3 points. With the final race at the Interlagos Cafe circuit, that will be a difficult one for drivers carrying 90 kilos with some massive straights and power that's going to be required. And we saw last season that with Roadhog and Foley that they did drop through the field. They were in the midfield battling for like 6th and 7th places throughout those races. So it won't be an easy one for those guys. And obviously we have seen Rossi being pretty quick of late, so that's something to look out for. Perhaps some team stuff might go on. Hopefully nothing too bad. And perhaps we might see some new winners with a few guys obviously not carrying as much weight. And we do have, I believe, the Super 2s will be next Thursday, not this Thursday coming, but next Thursday. And that will be at the Simmons Plains circuit. I do believe the new Super 2 files have just been uploaded this evening, actually,
They
by
have. I was
Phil
just
Boat.
keeping an eye on that one. So yeah, I'm keen to get back in my car and get some more laps down.
So I have some fond memories of that one. Obviously, you absolutely wiped the field. For, I think that was my only victory in the V8s last season. So
Hopefully you can relive those memories again.
I won't be racing. That's not a series that's for me. The only time I'll race in that series will be as a co-driver at Bathurst or something. But it's certainly a night off for me now, Thursday night. So obviously, and then on on Sunday, just before the finale of the touring cars, we do have Formula One once again. That is from the Imola circuit. The required files will be chucked up at some point in the next couple of days. It won't be big. It's just a file which has the correct tyres, so people don't get a game crash when they select certain tyres. All right. From myself, Lewis Wedding, and Mr. Rhodes here, we hope you've enjoyed our broadcast, and we hope to see you. Well, I hope to see you on Monday, and I'm sure Rosie wants to see you in 2 weeks' time. We hope you enjoyed your broadcast, and we'll catch you later.